Treasury?
Oh, I don't. I'm sorry.
108,376. And part of the Department of Treasury, of course, is the Internal Revenue Service. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, big part, frankly. Big part. Thousands of people work there, too. And on December 24th, 2022, one of those 108,376 employees at the Department of Treasury decided they were going to start an investigation into you. Is that right?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And that just happened to coincide with the day you did one of the Twitter files. I think one of the important ones. I think it may have been the second one, second or third, but one of those important Twitter files. Is that right?
Yes, it was.
And then a few months later, you're sitting in that same seat testifying in front of this committee, and the very time you're testifying, another one of those 108,376 people knock on your door. Unannounced visit to your home, which, by the way, they've discontinued because of this issue and a bunch of other crazy things they were doing. Is that right?
That's right, Mr. Chairman.
Just for the record, they actually owed you money, right? You didn't do anything wrong. Is that
They did. They owed me quite a lot of money.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make that clear. But obviously, a way to intimidate someone who is focusing on this issue we're discussing today, right?
Yes.
Now, we just got an order from a judge. The judge in the Southern District of New York said that no political appointees or special government employees can have access to information. 108,376 people can have access to information, but the people the President of the United States selects, the guy who's elected by 77 million people, he can't preliminary injunction against the defendants during the pendency of this from granting any political appointees, special government employees from any access to that information. I don't know about you, Mr. Schellenberg, I find that kind of troubling. 108,000 people can do it, at least one of them, Christmas Eve. We got a federal government employees working hard on Christmas Eve, probably remotely working, going after Mr. Taibbi, but the President of the United States can't have people go in and look and see if we can save some money for the taxpayers. He can't do that according to this judge. Think that makes sense, Mr. Schellenberger?
It doesn't. I mean, my understanding is that the president controls the executive branch and the executive branch
Article
agencies.
2, Section 1, very first sentence, executive power shall be vested in the president, in a president of the United States of America. First sentence.
Yep.
Yeah, but this judge says, no. We got to trust the bureau. This is the fundamental issue. Do you trust the unelected bureaucrats, I think it was Mr. Tiffany and Mr. McClintock, or do you trust the guy who was elected by the people? And that's where I would rather put our trust in the people who they put in office to do these kind of things. Now, you mentioned earlier, I'm going to jump around here and try to get to all of you, Mr. Schellenberger. You mentioned that USAID, which has been in the news of late, spending taxpayer money on all kinds of stupid things, is also involved in the censorship effort. And I want you to just elaborate on that a little bit, because this is going on as we speak. I want you to elaborate on that for the committee, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to understand that USAID viewed this very holistically. And it's important, if you look at the Hunter Biden laptop case, which is an extremely important case to understand, because the FBI was weaponized, then it weaponized the Aspen Institute to brainwash the entire media. It wasn't just that they censored it. It was that they changed the perception of the laptop. They created the perception that it was something other than what it obviously was. And that's what these guys are trying to do. These are called information operations, and USAID has been in the process of taking over so-called independent investigative journalism around the world, and at the same time then training NGOs how to demand censorship. For example, Mr. Aaron's organization has been working to train organizations to so-called flag misinformation behind the scenes. By the way, it's one thing to criticize somebody publicly, which we should all be engaged in.
Yeah.
But this thing where you're skulking around,
we do that all the time.
Secretly, yeah, that's what open democracy is. This thing of going out and like secretly flagging information behind the scenes and demanding censorship, that's completely an abomination. That is not what our democracy is about.
I just want to be clear. You're saying USAID, your investigation is now engaged in this pre-bunking kind of concept and process that they did with the laptop story in the fall of 2020.
And it's the exact same approach as well, where often what they're doing, for example, with USAID, OCCRP, is that they're leaking intelligence from the intelligence agencies and not like WikiLeaks where they just dumped it, I think, probably too much without the proper redactions, but they're strategically leaking it and then manipulating places like The Guardian and the New York Times to publish certain stories and control the whole investigative news process.
And we saw this from Yoel Roth's testimony. He testified during these weekly meetings that federal law enforcement communicated to us there was going to be hack and leak operations before the presidential election, likely in October. We had these so that what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and then they said here who it's going to involve, that there were rumors that the hack and leak operation would involve Hunter Biden. So they set them all up. And then
Burisma.
Shazam, they set them all up because they had the laptop and they knew what was coming. And when it happens, everyone buys into what the 51 former intel officials say.
That's right.
Mr. Subramanian, I want to give you the last word. RFK, I just want you to know, I appreciate the historical perspective you brought when you testified last Congress, but one of the statements that stuck with this last Congress was actually a statement made by RFK Jr. when he said, when you look at history, it is never the good guys who are for censorship. And that's what we're trying to keep in mind and stop it from both sides, from all sides. We just don't, we want the First Amendment. I'll give you the last 30 seconds here to respond.
Absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, and when I was here the last time, I think it was a throwaway comment to a representative. It was not even part of my testimony. I don't think so. And I said, the values of Western civilization are worth fighting for, going back to the Enlightenment and the Reformation. That is what gave us free speech. That's what distinguishes us from the rest of the world. And the First Amendment in America distinguishes America from the rest of the world. I come from India originally. I live in Canada. I'm from Canada. But I've lived in India, I've lived in the Middle East, I've lived in places where just speaking your mind can send you to prison. You cannot criticize anything that goes against the government or certain religions for that matter. And when I came to the West, it was, refreshing to finally be able to express myself. And unfortunately, what I left behind has come to me in Canada, has followed me to Canada. And I'm seeing that happening in the United States. And it's very worrying because it's happened so quickly, and I don't know where this is going to lead us to.
Yeah, if we can't settle our disputes with debate, the alternative is frightening, and we never want to get there. So I appreciate all of you. I appreciate from both sides. I mean, we want to embrace the First Amendment. Unfortunately, I have to run, Mr. Raskin and I have to run to the House Administration Committee to talk about the budget for this committee. And if you need, I should have said this at the outset, if any of you need a break, or we'll take it, but just let us know, just communicate with one of our staffers and we'll give you a break. If not, we're going to keep going. And I think it is the gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.